Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger is opening this year at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. This is the first time Six Flags has bought a new B&M in 10 years. And it makes you think, are times changing? The answer is, maybe a little, but probably not that much. Let's have some fun with this. Imagine a world where every other coaster manufacturer folds. Premier decides it wants to make exercise equipment. Mach Rides wants to be exclusive to Europa Park. Intamin gets sued out of existence by everyone they've wronged. B&M is all that's left. Or maybe like 12 years ago, Six Flags tweeted something offensive, and every other manufacturer refuses to work with them, except B&M. Or maybe Six Flags wins the B&M lottery, and they get 2 of each of their models. My point here is, if Six Flags was going to give each of their parks a B&M, what would each park end up with? These are the best B&Ms for every Six Flags park. I want to give a shout out to Zachary Engel. He's the one that gave me this idea for a video. Just to make this more fun, let's limit the chain to 2 of each model. I'm going to throw out their models that are obsolete. They aren't making any more floatless coasters. You're probably not going to see a sit-down looper, and there for sure will not be any stand-up coasters. That leaves 7 possibilities for 15 Six Flags parks, so one model is going to get 3 parks. Before we get started, if you can drop this video a like, I'd appreciate it. It helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. I have 2 gigas to give away, and the first one obviously is going to Magic Mountain. This is their biggest park, and I think it fits their lineup the best. A marquee coaster for a marquee park, it just fits. Goliath is the closest thing they have to a giga, but this is a hyper twister. It would be totally different from an out and back giga, maybe spanning the back of the park. Not all of these picks are super realistic, but I think this one has an outside chance of happening. We really have to see how aggressive Six Flags wants to be with their investments. We know they're working with B&M, but how far they'll go, how much money they're willing to spend, we'll have to wait and see. In this fantasy world, Magic Mountain is a slam dunk pick for a giga. As for the other park, the obvious picks are Great America and Great Adventure. Great America has Raging Bull, also a B&M, and I don't think it's all that useful to have a B&M Hyper and a Giga. I know Kings Island, Carowinds, and Canada's Wonderland have this, but I still don't think it makes a lot of sense. I did say Great America could use a Giga on another video, but that was an Intamin Giga. This would really contrast Raging Bull. As for Great Adventure, they also have a B&M Hyper and Nitro, but the main reason I don't think this is going to happen is King Ka. The Giga is meant to be the big premier coaster in the park, and when you have one that's 150 feet shorter than King Ka, it loses some of its edge. I'm giving the other Giga to Over Texas. Think about it. Six Flags gave these parks hypers built by Giovanola. They've been suffering for over 20 years. It'd be nice to pay them back with a B&M Giga. This is one of their bigger parks, so it's not unrealistic. Moving down the height scale, let's see who can use a hyper. None of the Six Flags parks have a Giga, but a lot of them have a hyper. That being said, I found 2 parks that would be perfect for a hyper. One of them is Six Flags St. Louis. The park only has one B&M, Batman the Ride, so they could really use anything other than an invert. When we were talking about the perfect addition for each Six Flags park, I said St. Louis needed a B&M hyper. The park needs airtime. It needs a standout coaster. It makes a lot of sense. They could even get a small hyper, like Goliath at Laron, but even that would be pretty expensive. I don't think it's all that likely for Six Flags to pay for this for St. Louis, but it doesn't make it any less of a perfect addition. The other hyper is going to Fiesta, Texas. Even though they're getting a dive coaster, I still let them play. The main reason for that was their need for a hyper. Down in Texas, you have Titan, and you have Steel Eel, but a B&M hyper would be way different from those. Give the park a nice 200-footer off the cliff. That would look amazing. If you want to add a coaster that would make this park leaps and bounds better than it already is, give it a hyper. B&M's newest model doesn't exist yet, the Surf Coaster. This is going to be kind of like an Intamin Blitz coaster, one with a launch, low to the ground, inversions, maybe some more intensity than we're used to. Six Flags loves working with Premier and S&S, so any park that needs a launch coaster probably isn't going to get one from B&M. But for this video's sake, let's see what we can do. The first surf coaster is going to Six Flags Great Adventure. One of this park's few gaps is a good dynamic launch coaster. King Ka is powerful, but it's a one-trick pony. I thought this park could use its own version of West Coast Racers. B&M's answer for that would be a surf coaster. This would be less about the launch and more about the elements after, exactly what Great Adventure needs. The other park getting a surf coaster is Six Flags New England. This park has been missing a launch coaster for over 20 years, and that's by far this park's biggest gap. It could use a dive or a wing, but putting a surf coaster in the front of the park, right there where Goliath was, and maybe we can even get Flashback to leave. I could see a compact, twisty, inversion-based launch coaster here. Again, it'll probably be from S&S or Premier, but something from B&M would be awesome here also. It's weird to say, but this park has plenty of airtime. Replacing 2 inversion-based coasters with another one makes a lot of sense. Now for the dive coaster, the one that started this whole conversation. These can come in all shapes and sizes, and I see a big one and a small one for Six Flags. The big one's going to Great America. There's nothing else like it in the area, unless you think Cedar Point is close, and it really isn't. With the park already having a hyper, an invert, a flyer, and a wing, the dive fits in really well here. I think for a park like this, they should invest in the 200-footer. That would be much more marketable, and it would stand out in the park as a star attraction, not just a filler ride. The other dive is going to Discovery Kingdom. Because this park has a 150-foot height limit, they could use a dive coaster exactly like Cliffhanger. The park only has one B&M, a floorless, so they could use pretty much anything here, just as long as it's not a full-size hyper or a giga. Because Medusa is completely focused on inversions, I think their next B&M could use another gimmick. That vertical drop is the gimmick they need. A small-scale dive for Discovery Kingdom is a perfect addition. The closest thing to it is all the way down in San Diego, so it's completely marketable. Next up is the wing coaster, probably their best model to look at, but not always the most exciting to ride. This is another inversion-based ride, just with the added gimmick of the cars on the side of the track. The first park getting a wing coaster is over Georgia. There is one not too far away at Dollywood with Wild Eagle, but that's not a deal breaker. This park has a hyper, an invert, and a flyer. I think Over Georgia could use another traditional looping coaster, so the wing serves that purpose. Also, this park doesn't have a launch coaster anymore, and as we saw with Thunderbird, you can launch a wing coaster. I wouldn't count on this, but you can dream. The other wing coaster is going to Six Flags America. The park has a hyper and a flyer, albeit not from B&M. Plus they have an SLC, which makes the invert not really work here. Their one B&M is a floorless, so there's a lot of options that would be good for the park. If you look around at the parks in the area, you have a B&M dive at Busch Gardens, but no other park around other than Dollywood has a wing coaster. If it's at Six Flags America, it's probably going to be small and cheap, and honestly, probably from Great America. Maybe they can just get X-Flight to move down there. That would make a lot of sense. Unless B&M can RMC Roar, I think the wing coaster is as good an option as anything else. Moving on to the flyers, and this is the one I chose for 3 parks. First, Six Flags Mexico. This is one of the few Six Flags parks without a B&M, but they do have a hyper and an SLC. Pretty much everything else is wide open. They don't have anything resembling a flying coaster, so this would be a really nice addition to the park. From south of the border to north of the border, La Ronde is also getting a flyer. They have 2 B&Ms, a hyper and an invert, so they're pretty much in the same boat as Mexico. The flying coaster gimmick would, well, fly here. The last park getting a flyer is Darien Lake. Here's another park without a B&M, but they do have a hyper, an SLC, and a Eurofighter, which is kind of like a dive coaster. The nearest flying coaster I guess would be at Great Adventure, and that's not even close. There are 4 B&M flyers in the Six Flags chain, all at their bigger parks, so maybe they can spread this around to their smaller parks. The final model is the invert. B&M doesn't make much of these anymore, but it's not obsolete. They just opened a small-scale invert at Gornalund, and that's exactly what Six Flags would be looking for these 2 parks. One of those parks is Great Escape. The park never gets anything new. They don't have any coaster that hangs under the track. Their only looping coasters are a boomerang and an old Arrow loop screw. A small, modern B&M invert would be very popular here. The other park is Frontier City. This does have a coaster under the track, but that's a family ride. They only have 2 loops in the park, so an invert with 3 or 4 inversions would be a big hit at the park. For Great Escape and Frontier City, you gotta be realistic. Sadly, any B&M isn't realistic for these parks, so that's depressing. But this is as realistic as it gets. That's all I have for this video. Let me know what you think of these ideas, if you agree or disagree, and why. What do you think the next B&M will be for the chain, and where will it be? Sound off in the comments below. Before you go, don't forget to drop a like, and if you're new here and love coasters, give me a sub. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, and my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my baseball channel if you happen to be a sports fan. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.